Hi everyone, I am Ram. Today I am going to show you how I made this scrunchie that I sewed by using two different velvet fabrics. After seeing this photo on Pinterest, I wanted to make a similar one. Previously, I have shown three different methods. However, this method is quite different than the others. Maybe a little harder, but I believe that you can make it even though you are a beginner if you follow all the steps that I will show in this video. Additionally, if you are patient, you can definitely sew this with hand stitching. I made a 1 cm seam allowance. You can change it if you are comfortable with a wider one. Both pieces were 50 centimeters long, and since I wanted the floral printed fabric would be 5 centimeters wide at the end, I cut 12 centimeters with seam allowance. The solid one will be 3 centimeters wide, so I cut it 8 centimeters wide with the seam allowance. By the way, you can change the dimensions. To illustrate, if you want more gathered one, you can use 60 centimeters strips instead of 50. This way there will be more gatherings like this. The solid color fabric was a square piece, therefore I had to cut it and then sew the short edges in order to have enough length. If you want to make a colorful scrunchie, you can combine the pieces in this way as well. I pinned the pieces right sides together. Firstly, I sewed a zigzag stitch and then sewed a straight stitch. It looks like this. If you have a serger, you can use it to stop your fabric from fraying. After sewing both sides, I measured and cut it to 50 centimeters. I pinned the long edges right sides together and sewed with a straight stitch plus a zigzag stitch. Briefly, I always sewed with the combination of zigzag and straight stitches since my fabric was fraying easily. I decided to make a top stitch here just because I like how it looks. If you don't want to do this, you can skip this step. If you are using a fabric kind that can be ironed, you can open the seam with iron before top stitching. I opened it by hand, as you can see, since velvet shouldn't be pressed, and it turned out like this. Now we can sew two ends together. I pinned them right sides together and sewed from here. I cut off the excess fabric. We are so close to reaching the final step. I put this tube wrong size out. I left this top part in the middle without doing anything. Then I folded the bottom part and I pinned the edges right sides together. I started pinning from the middle. After that I attached the right and left sides as well. I didn't increase the speed of the video here to make it more understandable. Perhaps it looks confusing a little, but it is not that hard while doing. I'm going to sew from here first, then I will continue pulling out the remaining piece, which is waiting inside of this fabric roll to be sewed, and later I will sew them together. I started sewing from this needle. I moved on, removing the needles and smoothing the fabric since mine wasn't flat. When I finished the pinned part, I pulled out the fabric inside of the fabric roll. The part I have just sewed is inside now. The part I need to continue sewing is outside. I continued to sew all the way down. I sometimes put some pins to be sure it stays in place while sewing. Also, don't forget to leave last roughly 3 centimeters without sewing so that we can turn it over and insert the elastic as well. I found the gap and turn it over and smooth it out by hand. I utilized 26 centimeters elastic. You initially can make a knot on your elastic and create a mock-up hair tie to check it on your own hair prior to sewing. I measured the elastic and put a needle mark and put a safety pin on the end. I didn't cut it in this step, otherwise I could lose end of the elastic, or you can just use another safety pin to attach it to your fabric. I string the elastic through. After reaching outside of the scrunchie, I moved the needle and cut this side. I made a knot. In addition, you can sew them together if you are using wider elastic. Now it's time to close up the gap. I folded the seam elements inwards and pinned them. I love closing these gaps with hand stitching because I don't want to create a visible stitch here. You can also sew on the machine. I made a leather stitch. I inserted the needle inside of the plain fabric and made a short stitch. Then you can cross the opposite fabric. I repeated these steps to create a leather stitch between fabrics. After pulling my thread, the gap was closed. At the end, I inserted the needle to the edge and made a knot. I turned the thread around the needle and pulled the needle. I hid the thread in the scrunchie and cut off the excess. By the way, I think scrunchies are perfect to use your fabric leftovers. I hope this was a helpful video and everything was clear. Especially I didn't increase the speed of the part that I leave one side in the middle and attach other two edges so you can see which sides are pinned together. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and you can turn on notifications by clicking the bell. See you in the next video.